Welcome to our Fireside Chat. Today's topic is Curating Great Experiences. My name is Jason Georgiorian, and I'm with LJ Architecture. I'll be your moderator today. So, I'll tell you a little bit about our Fireside Chats. Our Fireside Chats is a virtual ongoing forum where we bring experts together to talk about important topics, important topics within our built and natural environment. Our last chat, we heard about approaches to create memorable experiences from top experiential designers. And my personal favorite part was when our panel told stories about how they attempt to surprise and delight people. So here we are with another great panel today. If you're interested in learning about the arts or the future of the arts in Las Vegas, then there's no better place than here with us this evening. And we'll hear some insight from some of the most creative curators around and where they look to for inspiration. We'll also hear about their strategies for setting the stage for impactful artistic experiences. Just a little bit of webinar logistics. Everyone's muted. You also have a Q&A button. Please ask a question at any time. We'll do our best to get those answers for you. We are recording this chat. I'm going to double check that. Yes, we are recording this chat with our power outage. And so sometime be on the lookout for a link to that recording. Take a look at our past recordings if you had a chance, at our Fireside Chats and other webinars. Let us know what you think. And then finally, without further ado, I'd like to turn over to Craig Galati. He's going to get us kicked off with the panelist introductions tonight. Enjoy, please.
Thanks, Jason. I think our outage was due to so much energy right here in this stream. And
I agree.
This is so exciting to have you all here. So thank you very much. I'm going to do quick introductions and then we're going to jump right into questions. So I'm going to start with Heather. So Heather is the former director of the Nevada Museum of Art in Las Vegas. She works with artists and galleries and museums on strategy, capital campaigns, long-term planning, and problem solving. Recently, she served, as I said, the director of the Nevada Museum of Art, Las Vegas, helping lead the effort to establish an art museum in Southern Nevada, which I believe we're going to get someday. Previously, she worked as a director of Regen Projects Los Angeles before joining the firm KCM Fine Arts to build and manage art projects Ibiza and execute large-scale projects for the Luna Rouge Foundation. Since 2008, Heather has been building a museological private collection representing the most powerful female social and political voices throughout the 21st century. She serves on the board of the Black Mountain Institute, the Clark County Arts Commission, and is a member of the Nevada Women's Philanthropy Group. So thank you, Heather, for being here. Appreciate it. Joshua Levine is a founder and chief executive officer of Fired Up Management, a management and fabrication firm charting brand new territory in the festival and corporate event industries. Combining his 20 years as a passionate participant in Burning Man with his immersive interactive marketing experience, not to mention his distinctive artistic vision. Joshua successfully bridges the gap between large-scale festival art and corporate world, including Lyft, Zappos, and Life is Beautiful. More recently, though, he was appointed as the art director and curator of the Open Air Art Gallery at Area 15, the new immersive retail and entertainment art destination located just minutes away from the Las Vegas Strip and a place we all have to go. And Troy Hurd is also with us. He's the founder and CEO of Table 8 Immersive. So Troy is the artistic director at Majestic Repertory Theater in downtown Las Vegas and creator of their immersive experiences, Krampus and the Horrorwood video. In 2019, he created Table 8 Immersive, which is an experiential marketing agency with clients such as Jack Daniels, Zappos, MGM Resorts, and Cirque du Soleil. Troy is a graduate of Savannah College of Art and Design. Welcome all of you. Thank you so much for being here today, and we're excited to hear what you guys have to say. So I'm going to jump right into it and start with the first question is, and I guess I'll start with Heather first, and then we'll go to Joshua and Troy, and I'll kind of mix them up a bit. So, and just also, if you want to jump onto a question, please do so, because we want to keep this kind of organic and flowing. But how did you get into the field of curating experiences, and how has your role evolved over time?
Thank you, Craig, and thank you, Jason. Really excited to be here with you and Josh and Troy. It's really a pleasure. I feel I was very lucky to get my start in Las Vegas. You know, I think sometimes we take for granted the place that we're in as an experience. I feel like there's nothing more experiential than growing up in Las Vegas. You're surrounded by the most incredible colors, the most dazzling sights, the most incredible landscape, both man-made and natural, from Paris to the Bellagio to Red Rocks. When you're growing up inundated with such an incredible, complex visual cacophony, how easy it came to me in a certain way as an adult to be interested in art. I came to it through my education. I was very fortunate to do my undergraduate at UNLV, which at the time was really rich with artists and professors and an extremely creative dialogue. But for me, the Levening experience is an artwork that is just 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on your vehicle, outside of Las Vegas. It's an artwork built in the late 60s by a land artist called Michael Heiser, and it's double negative. It's two incredible, succinct cuts into the landscape in the Moapa Valley that you climb down into, and from one side to the other, it almost looks like you could leap over the incredible valley and continue your walk. So I feel my trajectory came from the place I grew up, Las Vegas. And again, I think there's no richer, more incredible experience than seeing the graphics and the neon and the signage and the shows that surrounded me every day.
Oh, that's so great. Having grown up here as well, I completely understand exactly what you're talking about. Joshua.
So Heather, you must have seen a lot of change in Las Vegas, being a Las Vegas native.
I have seen a lot of change in Las Vegas, and you know what is really beautiful? I grew up here, but I left for a number of years to continue my career in other places. And the amazing thing about coming back is what you love about the city hasn't disappeared. Double negative is still there. Caesar's Palace is still there. Of course, some of the buildings are no longer with us, but the vibrant neon signs live at the Neon Museum. It's not gone. It just has new layers to it. And I feel Las Vegas is such a generous city that it welcomes those layers, it welcomes those people, it welcomes art in different forms, I think in a very open and encompassing way, and culture in many forms in a way that not all cities are equipped to do.
I agree with you 100%, being that Vegas is not even 100 years old yet, right? Why other cities are thousands in LA and New York, we have the ability to craft culture and awareness, right? For the artists and for the community to bring in what Vegas really is. And people only think of Vegas as the Strip, but Vegas has such a deep soul for being so young, between Arts District and downtown and Area 15, other places around there, Red Rocks, Valley of Fire, so many other like natural environments, which is amazing.
Jump into this, Troy?
I'm just thinking about well, no, I mean, Josh is right on it too. I mean, we're the interlopers, the outsiders to the city. I come here by way of Georgia and Los Angeles. I'm thinking about how I grew up in a city that was hundreds and hundreds of years old. And I went to grad school in Savannah, which is, 1733. It's the founding. And of course, it existed before that. I always joke that I moved from a city that had a historic church on each corner to a city that had an adult store on each corner, because it was all being torn down left, right, and center. But the longer I've been here, the more I've realized that there is a real authenticity to be found in this city that you won't necessarily find. I tell friends it's like the Wild West. There's a lot of opportunity here to come and become part of the fabric that's already existing here. It's I hate to say this, it's a well-kept secret of Las Vegas. But
if you're gonna move here, move. If you're gonna move to Hunt Ridge. We need more people.
Come be my neighbor. Exactly. But no, there's a great wealth here that is underappreciated by a lot of people. And it certainly isn't advertised as part of our tourist attraction as it should be. I probably overspoke right now. So
no, that's great.
No, I think it's a beautiful point you bring up, and I would say to dovetail on both your and Josh's feelings, it's a time of possibility. It's a time of freedom, but really the work that we can do together is reframe. is reframe that conversation about Las Vegas and its relationship to art, because not only is it visually rich and dense, but we have incredible artists living and working here, and incredible opportunities for those artists to share their work in a variety of media. So this all encompassing, very open, very free, rich history, very young history, just allows a great moment in our city's history to tell a new story.
And I'll just kind of dovetail on that. The most beautiful thing is that Vegas is so open, from locals to the city to multiple different places, that in other cities, things wouldn't fly here, but we're in the Wild West. This is Vegas. We're not even 100 yet. There's so many things that change and morph and grow, but we accept all that comes here. And that's one Vegas kind of thread that's always been, whether you're like a pioneer in the days or a crazy artist now. Things are always changing, but we're always open, which is amazing for Vegas. That's why I moved here. That's why, like Trey said, I came from LA. I ran from LA.
Even when you think of the messaging, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And although that might imply a certain level of debauchery, what is underlying that? What underlies what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas is you can be yourself here. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be someone else. You can be yourself. You can be who you've always wanted to be. And there is an element of joy to that I think is, kind of overscored by the idea of debauchery, but really behind that, there's a great joy and a great freedom.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Because yes, there's the strip, and and that's kind of like the hangover in the wild, but there's such a depth to what goes on in Las Vegas that's not that. And we appreciate that, but there's so many ultimately, and that helps, Arts District and everywhere else to grow and push. So it's something that, like you said, you can come here and be who you want. That's why it's very similar to Burning Man, right? You can do what you want, dress how you want, kind of drive how you want. But it's an amazing place.
Mm-hmm. Great. I'm going to shift us to the next question. Let's start with Troy. What sources of inspiration do you draw from to design these unique experiences?
My imagination, honestly. It comes from being a solid Gen X kid growing up in a small town, watching a lot of movies, playing a lot of video games, and wanting to make movies myself. And it just that canvas of the screen couldn't contain it. Then it became stage because it's right there in immediate. And then the next evolution of that was put yourself in the movie. I mean, that's the nature of immersive for what I do, coming from a narrative base, is creating these experiences out of nowhere. Just the spark of inspiration where I can share these bizarre Lego dreams with an audience. I mean, we're in a position right now that everything is blowing wide open. I'm on a handful of projects. I mean, the one I can talk about now is we're creating an immersive haunt for October, but it's coming from a very dreamlike state. I mean, we're turning the audience into ghosts. So just a very interesting approach to it. It just, it's like I said, I'm a director, and that came from playing with Legos, playing with G.I. Joes, and now I get to do it on a larger scale. So who knows? I mean, it's that spark. That spark of I'm not equating myself, but ask Picasso, ask Danny Elfman, ask even Justin Favela, geniuses like Justin, a local artist. Where did he come up with the idea to do full-scale cars like piñatas? That's a really hard question to answer. You get to be a kid. I mean, it's just playing a kid as an adult. You just can't lose sight of that little spark.
I saw everybody on this chat writing down October. So that's great. Yeah, can't wait for that. What about you, Joshua? What do you how do you draw inspiration?
It's it comes from community, right, and culture. It's also taking care of artists. Artists have had the short end of the stick for so long, and taking advantage of it in so many different ways. That's what Fired Up started from, like 20 years at Burning Man. After a while, I started seeing artists not getting taken care of. So that's why I kind of stepped in to be like, hey, let me be that culture translator between like an artist and the corporate world, which really wants that, but doesn't know how to talk and doesn't know how to communicate. So they end up taking advantage. So the inspiration, really came from a lot with Burning Man and the culture of what we can offer back to the community, right? And that's really building awareness. So I'm here to babysit all my artists.
Well, they're lucky to have you. I'll tell you that.
Can we write that down? Can we write that down? Send it to each one.
Artist babysitter.
Yes.
Drop them all off at my house. That's fine. One big corral in the back.
Amazing. You're going to create amazing things.
And that's
I'll tell you that.
And that's
no
coming to
moments.
Vegas. I mean, like I said, I came from LA. I was an actor in LA for 15 years and done tons of TV shows and movies and things, but that wasn't soul quenching, right? Like I do what I love every day to bring art to the world and help people, live their dream. So, I hope everyone can do that at one time.
How about you, Heather?
Very much like Josh, I draw much of my inspiration from artists, but I also draw a lot of inspiration from the audience. When I think about putting together exhibitions and working on shows, I'm always thinking about, art is a great communicator. So who are we talking to? What are we trying to say? And I get very inspired by storytelling. And my first source of inspiration, again, to go back to it, is Las Vegas. Any project I've worked on since I've come back and any project I'll work on in the future is about telling the story of Las Vegas through art and experiences, and also reaching an audience that may feel like art is inaccessible or that there are barriers. In order to talk to people, you have to learn how to speak their language. And so I often get very inspired by the work of artists, the work of people in the community, and really try to relate any conversation that we're having through art to tangible ideas that people can understand, so that they can be inspired, so that they can be comfortable, so that they feel like art is speaking to them. And Troy, I'm so glad you mentioned Justin Favela, because I think he's an incredible communicator, and he's taken sculpture and really transformed it into a media that we see, we know the pinata material, and he's made it behave in a way that we've never seen it before. And how inspiring is that?
Just to echo on that, like art shouldn't offend. I mean, there is, but if art makes you feel like an idiot, then it lost, right? Art should be for the masses. So if someone walks up to it and it's a painting on a wall, I don't understand it. Like, to be the medium so the masses can understand art, and that's not scary, and that it can grow and inspire others.
Great. Well, so we have a lot of probably designers, and a lot of our friends are on this call. I was just curious, when you set out, and I'm going to start with you, Joshua. When you set out to kind of design an impactful experience, do you begin with what that experience would be? What are the strategies, and how do you actually get there to create this experience?
Many layers, like the art onion, right? There's so many layers. So like the artichoke, it's all spiky on the outside, but the heart is really, tender. It's almost like a four-prong, right? You want the artist, the community, the message and the awareness, and what the community really values of what that is. So it's something that we always start with an idea, right? Blue sky, but then go into how does that affect this community, and how does it better the community in the right way? Kind of a small start.
Yeah. Troy, what about you?
How do I approach? What was that? What was the
the question is that if you're going to create an impactful experience, what are some of the strategies, and how do you go about doing that?
Oh, I mean, it's like Heather and Josh said, it all starts with the audience. It all starts with the receiver, who's going to receive the art. I mean, what I do is slightly different than fine art in that it's the narrative has to be very structured. Even if it's a dreamlike narrative, there's still, we tend to put everything in storytelling in terms of a beginning, middle, and end in performance. So it all depends on the project. That's such a wide question. Well, for example, I mentioned the Ghost project that's coming up. The way that was presented to us, we were commissioned to activate a space that's downtown that's attached to a bar. So how do you shape the audience's experience that ends in an evening in a lounge? But there's another project we're working on for a residency that's coming up this summer. It's a pre-show immersive experience. And for that, it's, what's the value of this high ticket price? So we have to think of return on value for that. So honestly, from my field, it all depends on the consumer, if you look at it that way. I never quite nailed it like that, but yeah.
Yeah. Heather, what about you on that one?
Very much in concordance with Josh and Troy, really following the audience, listening to the audience, thinking about them, thinking about the story that we want to tell, the idea that we want to promote. And I think a lot of that is when you're very thoughtful and you approach your work in a thoughtful and reverent way, you translate that experience to the viewer. If you go to the viewer and you meet the viewer where they are and you show them love and you consider their position, I think you can be a very successful communicator. Because, in working on exhibitions, when you really try to keep your viewer in mind, I think you create a very successful show, experience, immersion, but that you've let someone know you've thought about them and they're your consideration and they're the reason why you want to do. And how do you use art to tell that story and translate your thoughts or sometimes very complex ideas into something that someone can understand and be inspired by and be educated and draw their own inspiration. What I often hope to do in my work is have an artist or a young person go and look at a show and think like, I can do that. And I love the idea that you can put together an exhibition or an experience that gives someone permission to make art or to be a poet or to be an actor or to be a musician. Because I think a lot of times in our hierarchy of education, we don't always allow for that permission. Oh, you're an artist. Oh no, how are you going to afford to live? What are you going to do? Like, it's kind of ridiculous. And I think it goes often to what Josh has said about artists having an unfortunate relationship to payment and getting paid. It's because at times in society, we haven't told them their work is valuable, and their work is incredibly valuable. They're always ahead of us. And I'm really curious to see what art is going to look like in the next 5 or 10 years after we come out of a pandemic, because artists are truly visionaries. They're always ahead of us. And I hope that, someday we move away from this starving artist nomenclature and allow artists to be free and creators and, not, and healthier financially. So I really commend the work that you do, Josh, because that's always been in my value system, that artists should get paid for the work that they do, and that creativity is valuable. It's as valuable as so many other aspects of our creative field, but artists making work and being compensated for it and being taken care of is really important. So a long segue answer, but artists and audience remain the inspiration and the seed from which everything I do starts, with the art, with the artists, and with the audience.
And real quick to kind of dovetail both, what they said is that, arts program has been cut for so long. Like, that's the first thing that goes is arts. And like Heather says, is like, you're always like an artist is not credible. That's not successful. Like, you have to strive or die before your things get made. And that's why, I try to put that, culture out there that like, it's okay to be an artist. There's a, that's a very viable way, and it's quantifiable. Like, art brings culture, brings awareness and energy to that. And we're just starting to see that now, which is great. But thanks to Heather and Troy and all, this collective tapestry.
I mean, it gets forgotten all the time, honestly. And arts is a multi-billion-dollar industry. I mean, we're talking in Nevada. Yeah, they think, it becomes, because it's cut from schools, it becomes the extracurricular activity, and they don't realize it's a major force in America's economy. And we're 100%. We're seeing it right now. There wouldn't be $18 billion put aside for the Save Our Stages Act for the SVOG were it not. I mean, we're experiencing it. There are so many performers out of work, so many performers, technicians, concessions, ushers, all across the board out of work, that we're slowly getting back to it, but they've been suffering for a year. because it was considered a fringe benefit. It's not just the fringe, it's the essential core of our culture.
Absolutely. And it's amazing how many ancillary people are part of the art movement. Like you said, like all the people that go along with it. So there's more than just that piece of art. It threads to everybody around. So that's kind of like where the city comes in to really, understand what that is, to keep everyone together.
You guys bring up such a great point that, maybe one of the silver linings of the pandemic, which we're always looking for them, was the fact that we found out what it was like without these things. And we found out we can't live without them. And it's so important. I remember one day I was on a plane. This was about a year ago, and I was flying back, maybe 2 years ago. We're flying back from somewhere, and somebody asked me what I did. And I said, well, I'm an architect, and I design a lot of museums and parks and recreation. And the lady said to me, she says, well, you do the things that make life worth living. And I'm like, I can't think of a better description of art, right?
100%.
Art is what makes life worth living.
Yes.
Jason, you jump in there.
I would say it brought Jason back, so that's what I'm good.
Here we go. Well, someone said architecture. I'm back. But speaking of that, there is a question about architecture and art, and I think this is a good time for that. And so the question is, do any three of you ever consider being an architect? And if so, would appear that imagination that creates the built environment would be similar to inspiration, which occurs in the general field of art. And they like to hear your thoughts about that. I actually think there's a strong connection between art and architecture, and I'm curious to see your perspective on that.
Well, as a theater artist, I mean, a lot of my early undergrad classes were in scenic and lighting design. I used to have a draft table in a T-square, if that gives with the team. But no, absolutely. I mean, art is architecture. It's all about design and it's balance and proportions. But it's everything that you study. It's applicable in fine art. It's applicable in music composition. It's applicable in directing, film directing, live directing. You see it. I mean, architecture and engineering I see as siblings, and Olive Chang's art cars are engineered. It all works together.
Henry Chang, he makes the most amazing chassis of cars. One day he'll finish it.
And Craig, I think you also bring up a excellent point. Now we're coming out of the pandemic, and what are the silver linings? And I always thinking like how curating these experiences is part of the healing that people need to go through. And I know Troy, you specifically done some stuff over the pandemic to help create those experiences with people. I'm curious if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. We did our final show April 13th. We actually shut down our company before the governor shut down the state. It was an immersive show taking place off site that had full interaction between actors and audience. You were coming to a ladies' 1960s garden club recruitment tea. So there was lots of physical contact, lots of one-on-one scenes in tight places. And my partner and I just had this strong conversation that even if Las Vegas wasn't hit at that time, it was still in the news, it was still a pandemic, and no one was going to be able to come disappear in this world that we're creating, knowing that they heard on the news an hour earlier that there's this virus going around. So we shut that down, but because we've been working together, we were potted, and a group of my core ensemble and I continued to work over this, creating. First we went online, we went on Instagram Live. We took one of the characters from the garden party and gave him a call-in show. So you had an interactive show there. But eventually, when they started loosening restrictions, we turned the back of the theater, our alley, right in front of Esther's Kitchen, into a drive-in experience for retail. So we had artists who were out of work, who were on Spiegel World. We had clowns, we had acrobats, burlesque dancers. And no one said you couldn't deliver this stuff, deliver retail with a flair. So you bought a package of a mask and a t-shirt and a sticker, came to pick it up at your assigned time, and it was delivered by a performer who didn't act. But that evolved into a series of drive-in shows. And when we did our first, actually even dating back then, every time we did a drive-in experience, the payoff to that, it didn't make any money. It was all experimental. It was all trying new forms for us. the payoff was when someone would come and say, thank you. I got out of the house and I got a story. I got an engagement. I got an experience. And that just reifies how crucial it is for our just day-to-day living to have that connection and exposure to arts. When we did a show called The Parking Lot. It was a rom-com that was written for us, performed by a couple who've been quarantined together. 16 cars pulled up into a used car lot. The two actors had microphones. We broadcast it over an FM station that you tuned into. Every night there's this. It wasn't even the show that was the payoff. It was this collective sigh of relief of sharing space as an audience. Even if you weren't sitting shoulder to shoulder in an enclosed theater, you were sitting car to car to car with these people that you've not been around for months. It just fed the soul in such a way that it moved me as a producer to experience. And, you know, it just tells me that even through this, you know, as long as we can persevere, it doesn't matter how you deliver that experience. As long as there is a real human connection there, it's the payoff. It's not about the dollar, it's about the experience. Of course, you got to produce, but you know, at this time, it was just so necessary. And like I said, it was just reassuring and reifying that what we're doing as artists, all of us on this call, you know, is right and is correct. I mean, sometimes I have what imposter syndrome, sitting in a rehearsal telling actors, cross here, and you're saying this line because you want this out of this person. I'm thinking, that's silly. Why am I not in a science lab? Why am I not building this? Why am I not building that? You know, but at the end of the day, it is crucial. It is arts are essential to existence. I mean, not to get political, guys, but anytime you have a fascistic government come up, the first thing they eliminate is the art.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, there you go. There's a connection between art and architecture is about bringing people together, right?
Yeah.
Or places for people to come together.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I don't know if Josh or Heather, you want to tag in on that question?
Go for it, Heather.
I've been very lucky and had the privilege of building art spaces several times throughout my career. And I will say, working with architects to design spaces to show art has been a lesson in the quiet magic of both being a piece of architecture and also finding a place to disappear and let the art shine. So you walk into a gallery or a museum and you see this white cube, this white space, but you don't see everything that's been behind it to make it that almost church-like place for you to have this singular experience with art. And although it seems somewhat simple and straightforward, there's a real magic to making a space to show art in a traditional sense, whether it's a gallery or a museum. So I've learned so much from architects and how to look at art, and how architects have taught me how to walk through a space and given me little clues. And I feel like the experience of architecture is often as equally spiritual as the experience of art.
150%. It's like an artistic peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? You like, they come together and they like blend amazing, and you really can't have one on these bigger scales, one without the other, you know, because it really does dovetail very nicely. And like Heather said, like the quiet storm, right? Like if it wasn't for most of you guys, like we wouldn't see these beautiful buildings. Most artists they could paint or sculpt. They can't build a building to code that we can all walk in and live in for the rest of our lives. So it's something that really kind of comes hand in hand to what that is. So, so thank you for all your hard work you do. It basically is like, what is it? It was like architects make it, engineers say no.
That's pretty much it. So I want to shift to maybe another question. You know, we're coming out of the pandemic, and the opportunities are just huge, I think, for all of us coming up. What are we going to do to try to diversify our audiences and try to attract more diversity within the audiences that we have, both in arts and you know, theater and architecture? Just curious your thoughts on that, because this country really needs that, I think, right now.
You know, I'll jump in real quick. Like as we grow together, right, to make this unique tapestry of all of us, you know, that stretches the art tentacles farther, right? And art is a broad stroke for theater, museums, and everything in between. That once we push it out to the masses, and art is very accepting, and that's what we do. That pulls more people in and brings fathers and mothers and kids. Area 15, for example, like that's a family-friendly environment, right? But it's like a giant party inside. And that I've seen little babies to, you know, older people and everywhere in between. These things like that are made by visionaries that take that risk brings and galvanizes everyone together.
That's great. Troy or Heather?
Well, Craig, that's a major conversation that's being had in theater right now. There's a movement called We See You. It's white theater. It's these old white men who've been at the head of these organizations for decades after decades. Majestic from its inception has been an extraordinarily diverse theater company, racially, gender, across the board. Our production staffs are very diverse. Our casts are extraordinarily diverse. And we open our doors frequently for all sorts of people to, we call it make space, provide resources. So I have a space, I have a budget. Sometimes I open the door, give the budget, sit back, be quiet. Just make space, provide resources. There's no simpler way of saying it than that.
We try not to like tell Picasso how to paint.
Yeah.
You know, as much as we can.
Absolutely.
I agree with you, Troy. I think making space and providing resources is incredibly important. I also think meeting people where they are and going to them. You know, if we recognize collectively that we have this shortfall in the education system, maybe nonprofit organizations could collaborate and bring art to schools and, you know, fill that void. And I think one of the greatest ways that you can address diversity is through programming that can speak to a wide demographic and a variety of audiences, and yet programming that can be very specific and brought to you and speak to you. And as you said, Troy, you know, staffing is incredibly important, giving people opportunities, not just entry-level opportunities, but real leadership opportunities, mentorship, creating positions that can lead to future growth and fostering that growth in a really authentic and genuine way. But again, I would say the most important for the arts is programming.
Mm-hmm. And there's such a fear in theater. We don't do seasons. I eliminated seasons 2 years ago because it's extraordinary. I feel as a creator is extraordinarily limiting. We don't have a huge subscriber base, so we don't have to appease that. We take it production by production. So it allows us flexibility to open the doors whenever someone comes in with a project. I was going somewhere with that, but I completely got derailed.
Well, opening the doors is exactly that. It's open.
Yeah.
It's
support
space available. Yeah, support.
It's
space available and
support resources for people that don't have that. And if we're able to offer an open door for someone to come, or an open school where we can start earlier with the kids and things like that. I see you. All right.
That was the point. That was the point that I was coming to. With seasons in the nonprofit theater, we're talking mid to large nonprofit theater companies and producing organizations and presenting organizations. They tend to be extraordinarily reluctant to provide reluctant to program other voices than the centered white voice, the traditional Broadway thing, because they think they're going to lose their subscriber base. They're going to offend, Alexia, their subscriber base. I see your question there. Alexia and I are actually, we go back years and years and years. She's seen plenty of offensive art come out of my organization at one time or another. But it's that fear of losing that money, fear, okay, if I do this, I'm gonna take a risk. So every February, we're gonna do Raisin in the Sun. Or every February, we're going to do Ain't Misbehaving. thinking that's my risk and not realizing, no, you need to be programming African-American literature into your season, regardless of whether or not it's Black History Month. You've got to normalize that. You've got to normalize Asian works within you've got to normalize trans works within your organization and not make it, this is the pedestal, I've done my job, pat on the back. It's the way you operate your organization top down. If we're afraid of offending that subscriber base, they're in their 70s and 80s. They're not the ones buying the tickets now. The ones buying the tickets now, they're in the 30s and 40s. They're my generation. We're a lot more open-minded than that generation. No offense to those who may be up there. But, you know, none on this call, certainly. But, you know, you just got to do it and provide it. You've got to make space, provide resources, and stop being so freaking afraid. Am I allowed to say freaking? I don't know.
You sure can. You can even say other things too.
And collaborate, collaborate.
100%. 100%. Teamwork and culture, right? And that's the experience economy is where we're going, right? People want to have an experience with their revenue. And I always say it's always art and culture number one. But we have to be real, money's number two, right? Like a real close number two, like right there, but still art and culture are always number one. So it's something that that's that collaborative, energy that we pull together and acceptance, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah, I love where this is going, because you think about kids, right? Kids are creative and they don't know any boundaries. They don't have any of the biases. They just create. And somehow, as they grow up, we grind it out of them and we put them in boxes. And that's not where kids need to be. And I really appreciate that. And I know you guys all believe that we need to get back into these schools and we need to keep these art programs alive, or we need to find other ways to do them, because we're losing too many artists and too many architects because they're getting the art ground out of them. Sorry, that was my little soapbox.
No,
100%. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think we all grew up with the saying, when you grow old, your heart dies. Thank you, Ali Sheedy and John Hughes. You've got to keep that youthfulness. You've got to keep that childhood wonder. I mean, it's like the first question you asked me, where's my spark come from? It's that. I'm still hey, t-shirt, baseball cap. This is not just a uniform. This is what I wear. It's being a kid and not growing up. Pay your bills, pay your rent, maybe fall in love, create a family. All right, yes. But other than that, what is adulthood? Adulthood is that basic responsibility in being a decent person. Beyond that, why shouldn't you have an imagination? Why shouldn't you have a dream? Because
Absolutely.
You're told not to have one.
I love it.
Troy, you're getting some amen. So you gained a few fans today.
That's the Southern in me. Sorry, testify.
You got a question, Jason?
We have a few questions coming in, so I want to be respectful of that. There's a great dialogue, by the way. Thank you. And I'm probably going to butcher some pronunciation of this question from Alexia. Alexia is one of our own, one of our dynamos. So this one's for Josh. Why do you think that art shouldn't offend because it's for the masses? What about Duchamp's fountain, Picasso's Guernica, Goya, Dali was considered offensive at one point? And she finds that there are many examples where art uses emotional reaction as a vehicle for certain types of messaging and to provide social critique. You want to respond to that?
Yeah, no, first off, great question. First off, I really mean offend. I feel more it's if the art makes the viewer feel dumb, where they can't because if you're offended or you're positive, you still get it. But if you're made feel like the fool, right, then you won't accept art and you'll be turned away from it. So whether it offends you or makes you happy, those are the things that you want, right? But if it's something that makes everyone feel stupid, nobody likes that. And art sometimes makes people that aren't that cultured feel stupid. Like the duct tape banana, right? People have no clue on what that is, and they're like, "That's stupid. Art's fucking dumb." Oops, freaking dumb. And but in actuality, the deepness of that banana and tape is actually one of the coolest pieces of art like ever. Once you get into the brass tacks of like what that actually was. So it's more of just having art not make you feel stupid.
Do we think
Okay.
it's the art that makes you feel that way, or the infrastructure around it, or the context? I mean, the
Great.
art was shown at an art fair, and obviously, you know, if you're going to an art fair, you have a certain economic privilege that allows you to go to an art fair and to pay a ticket price of $40+ and to go to a center of commerce. Is it the art, or is it the way that we talk about it, or is it the infrastructure around it? Is it the way that museums at times in previous centuries were designed, almost like a courthouse, like with a huge grand entrance to make you feel small? You know, you don't see museums designed that way necessarily now. And in the most recent years, I think architects have really changed the language of making museums to make them more open and to make you not feel like that small person. So I also think there's another place of possibility there where, you know, a lot of the infrastructure around the conversations about art are about, you know, not purposefully so, but can be intimidating. And if we strip those away and you have that banana duct taped against the wall, then, you know, you have Duchamp's urinal or Picasso's Guernica, something that was so radical and really shook you to the core. And how many people thought about that banana? You know, how many people thought about it, tweeted it, talked about it, memed it? And that artist, Maurizio Cattelan, has been a provocateur throughout his entire career, which spans 20, 30 years. And he's always pushing buttons, but, you know, he really wants to make us think. And that was one of the most talked about pieces of 2020, no doubt.
Absolutely. And to that, the people going to the museums doing that are already on that mindset. It's the people, like we said before, that have no clue what that is, that are intimidated by giant cathedrals and giant things like that. So if we're able to get to the people that are on the outside, that would like to be inside, but are too intimidated about like the culture that's been forever, right? How do we get those people in?
We need to demolish that distinction, that binary distinction, outside, inside. We need to flatten that. And we need to flatten that through architecture, through the way that art's presented, through the way that art is taught, much in the way that we need to rethink, you know, Americanness. We need to rethink all of the institutions of oppression, even the idea of collecting, you know, 85% of the world's art is in storage. What does that mean?
Absolutely.
What does it mean to store and not to show? What does it mean to collect and not display? I mean, I think there's a lot of potential for dismantling, but most importantly, we here in Las Vegas, we're not burdened by those, you know, old ships sailing forward, crushing everything in its wake. We actually don't have to make those distinctions between outside in, because we have the freedom of doing new things.
Absolutely.
Here, here.
Wow. Thank you, Heather. So another question, and our hour goes quick when there's a great dialogue. I'm telling you. How do we encourage collaborations? Is there maker spaces or meetings out there that people can join or promote?
I would love to have a maker space here. That's one thing that we're missing, and that's something that Tony always had a vision of, you know, and a lot of people have, is like an actual maker space where people can come and actually learn to weld and learn to do things and work with other artists and see artists in the process. So it's not a scary concept, and people can understand that. We would love that, along with a Nevada Art Museum.
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas.
I mean, I also think it would be great, as you often have in other places in other cities, and it may already exist and I haven't found a way to tap into it yet, but what if there is that sort of network council? At one point, you know, Black Mountain Institute had an idea of really instating this, and I want to hearken back to how grateful I am to the work that they do, because culturally they've also done an amazing job of putting us on the map. And if you haven't listened to the recent episodes of Black Mountain Radio, which are all about arts and culture in Las Vegas, I strongly recommend it. But, you know, at one point they were really doing open calls and inviting arts leaders to meet. And because the pandemic made it, you know, prohibitive for us to all meet in person, maybe there's a way we could do something with Nevada Humanities and set up a situation where we could have maker spaces or open meetings or creative discussions, because we have a lot of work that we can do. We have great work ahead of us. And if we do it together, we'll be so much stronger.
I also think
100%.
it's very important to reach across the mediums, to reach across the aisles as well. And that's something we do here. We collaborate with dancers and choreographers. We pull in musicians and composers, and not just performance. We work with a lot of fine artists here creating theatrical installations. So they'll display their art, and we'll create a theater around it and a performing experience around it. You know, we want to start reaching more into the literary field in Las Vegas. And what are those collaborations that can be had between performing arts and poets, performing arts and writers, performing arts and essayists? Because there's so much there that can be tapped into that's not really being tapped into in Las Vegas. So the potential is there. It's just a matter of finding the right people, braving that ask, and making that thing manifest.
Thank you. So there's a couple more questions. If I ask one of the panelists, can you type in an answer, and then the audience would see that. But I know we have another question we want to get to, Craig.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to skip the one bit and jump right to the last question because we're running short on time. But I'm going to ask you guys if you have any new experiences you're working on that you'd like to share with us, because quite frankly, we teased the audience with this to get them to come. So Troy already started with the ghost thing, but what about Joshua, Heather, and Troy? You may have something else.
I've been very, very lucky to be working on the second installment of an exhibition at the Bellagio Gallery of Fine Art with other local native Teresa Tiberti, who's been the director there of 13 years. And this is our follow-up exhibition to an exhibition called Always More that features artworks that you never get to see from Vegas collections, and talks about why do people live with art? What's sitting next to them when they eat breakfast? What do they love to look at every single day? How did they even let us borrow these works and steal them from their homes for 6 months? But we really wanted to use the gallery space to show works that live here in Las Vegas that you don't often get to see because they're not in public view, works that people love and have been so excited to spend time with in their home. And so we put together this exhibition. It closes on the 25th, and we're working on our follow-up exhibition called Leather Throwers. And it's an exhibition about artists that were inspired by the world of boxing. So there's artists in the exhibition from Jean-Michel Basquiat to Gary Simmons to Jeffrey Gibson. It's a great range of artists shown with some of the most amazing boxing ephemera from Las Vegas. The first Las Vegas fight that ever had $1 million price tag. The first Las Vegas fight that ever had a woman fighting. Early boxing posters from boxing matches at Cashman Field from Top Rank. The moment in history when boxing moved to the casinos. So to really take, again, the inspiration from Las Vegas, look at our history. Our history is so amazing. We have so many Las Vegas stories we haven't told. So we've used this pandemic period to tell the story of Las Vegas through art, and that will open May 21st.
Fantastic.
So we have the largest piece of Burning Man art coming to Las Vegas. That will be landing at Area 15. Secret project called Cattywampus, but you guys will be seeing it shortly.
Woo!
Awesome.
Fantastic.
When is the landing?
It's still circling right now, but within the next couple months.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, Table 8 Immersive has several projects in the works with clients that I can't speak about right now, but they will be released as time comes. But Majestic Repertory Theater will be reopening. Our grand reopening will be in October with a brand new, and this is breaking news to this panel, it's a brand new musical written by the Broadway composing team of Bandstand. It's called The Sandman. It's a little nightmare musical. It's set in the same world as the Nutcracker. It's based on the writings of E.T.A. Hoffman, but it feels more like Coraline and The Corpse Bride and Tim Burton movies, if you're familiar with that. And we are actually using the space right now. We've got a show called Hot Trash opening May 4th. It is produced by several Spiegel World artists who have combined a neo cabaret with a Times Square peep show.
Cool.
Wink, wink.
I can't wait.
HotTrashShow.com for that one. But the other one, you can find us on Majestic Rep.
Wow.
Wow.
See, I told you, audience, you're going to get something that there's, you should hope you wrote it all down. Fantastic. Well, guys, I think we're going to have to come to an end, although I don't want to. This has been fantastic, and maybe we can do it again sometime.
There's always a sequel.
There's always a sequel.
Yes.
There's always a
Perfect.
sequel.
Perfect. Well,
Love to have you guys back.
yeah.
We'd love to be back.
Just want to thank you all for spending the time with us. This was absolutely phenomenal. And thank you once again for doing all the things that you do for our community to make our community worth living in. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
you, Craig.
Hey,
thank you, Jason.
I'm gonna do a closure with the next chat. We've already have it planned, so let me close with that, Craig, too.
Good.
Oh, so we have the next date already booked. So June 22nd, we're gonna have a headliner, Dr. Esther Sternberg, and she's gonna talk about healing spaces, and she has a book on the subject. So we're really excited to have her and look forward to that. So thank you all for joining us. On this screen, you should be able to see email. If you need any more information, please reach out and let us know. So thank you to our panel.
Thank you, guys.
Great discussion.